Welcome to Score the Podcast. We're very excited to be here inside the studio of Son Lux, Ryan Lott, Ian Chang, Rafiq Bhatia. Thunderbolts is out. Exciting time for you guys.
Super cool project. Thanks
for making time for us. How are we feeling about the release?
Really elated. It's been, for better or for worse, as a band and in scoring film, this is only our second one. The first one was Everything Everywhere All at Once. And in both cases, the timelines were very long. And so, yeah, we had worked on it for pretty much 2 years. And so it just feels really good for it to be outside of our own heads and into the hearts and minds of people. So yeah,
there is a lot of excitement about this. It's been a while for a big kind of Marvel movie to come out again. And so there's a lot of pressure, obviously. Was there a moment during production, even wherever you began this process, where you thought, oh my God, this is more daunting than I expected?
Well, I think for me, I think it was, we had the opportunity to visit set, and, you know, that shit was real. It was like, wow, there are so many incredibly talented people, like the whole way through, bringing their A game to this, and the coordination of amassed efforts of super talented people, and just the sheer scale. For me, that was like, okay, like kind of like that vibe, you know what I mean? So,
game on.
Yeah, game on. But in a great way. I wasn't intimidated, but I was like, okay, this is real, you know.
This is Son Lux on Score the Podcast.
Score the Podcast, the only show taking you inside the studios of the world's most celebrated composers and musical storytellers. Presented by Vienna Symphonic Library. Here are your hosts, Kenny Holmes and Matt Schrader.
What's up, guys? I'm Kenny Holmes.
I'm Matt Schrader.
This is Score the Podcast, presented by Vienna Symphonic Library. We will get right back to our interview with Son Lux in just a moment. But first, we want to remind you, of course, about our terrific sponsor, Vienna Symphonic Library. And they've got another great package available.
A new release. It's called Synchron Stage Reverb. It lets you place any type of audio signal anywhere on their stage A at this legendary Synchron stage in Vienna. Really amazing. You don't have to be an expert in this stuff. We're not, but it is pretty cool to be able to play something in the front, in the back, or somewhere anywhere on the stage, and have the acoustics that feel like you're really there.
Yeah, they're really bringing the Synchron stage into your home studio, whether it's a laptop, a big computer setup, rooms of all sizes, really. You can set this up and make it sound like the pros. One day, hopefully, you'll be at Synchron Stage Vienna recording. It's a beautiful space. But in the meantime, with all of these different packages they're releasing, it gives you the power to bring that Vienna sound.
The magical ambiance.
Yes. Yeah. The city of music right into your home, whether you're in the States, whether you're over in Europe, anywhere around the world, you can do it. And all of these packages are available now on their website, vsl.co.at. They're really easy to implement into all your different digital audio workstations, whatever system you use. I'm not a professional composer. I've been able to load these packages up and play with them and make some really cool stuff. And the reverb is just another one added to the collection. They're available right now. Again, the website's on your screen, vsl.co.at. Go check them out and get the reverb. That's not reverb.
That's not it, but you can check it out. There's a free trial license, and you can check out all the other freebies and other things they have as well for composers to help elevate your craft. And
give them a run through. Just try it. If you know they're free trials, how would you not try them?
Do it.
And thanks again to Vienna Symphonic Library for sponsoring this season of Score the Podcast. Now back to our interview with Son Lux.
Okay, so was that in Atlanta?
Atlanta.
Okay. Yeah. So all of you guys are there walking around. What's your introduction to all of this? Are you walking into giant green screen sets and like all of that kind of craziness? Or what's your introduction?
You know, it's really interesting because there's so much of this film that was done in camera, that what we actually walked into were like very elaborate, very large scale sets. And we were like, you know, just the scale of it all and the degree to which great, you know, pains and had been taken and great lengths had been like gone to try to make as much of it real as possible, was one of the things that I think we were, you know, and we had some amount of prep because Jake had been talking about doing it this way and stuff, but like just realizing the scale that was necessary and the amount of like labor and resources and all these things that, you know, had to be put into just making the thing like just that much more tangible. It was really moving to us. And over the course of the day, we like saw, you know, a lot of kind of storyboarding and like scale models of things and like just like all of this work that had gone into preparing for these days of shooting by so many different people who were all very talented and like clearly cared. And I think there's something for composers like going into that sort of situation and getting a sense of that energy that exists around a project like this one, that is really energizing. And that I think, you know, in both cases, like also for Everything Everywhere, we went on set and like it was just a day, but we took it with us for the rest of the time.
Absolutely. Yeah.
How did that change the way that you interpreted the script? And I guess probably some of the dailies maybe that you had seen. I don't know if you were getting any of that stuff early on, but how did kind of being there, seeing the real thing?
And I just want to point out too, that's pretty rare. Composers usually come in.
Yeah.
Here's the footage.
The
Here's
last
even the
moment. Here's some reels to spot and write to, but
Yeah,
you're
exactly.
seeing it from the ground floor.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
I guess like in terms of interpreting, like the first part of your question about how it helped us interpret the script, definitely tonally really helped. And I think a big part of that was because we weren't just stepping into a thing where there's a bunch of green screens. Like there was like a full on set with like, and like, you know, and
Sets
there's
upon
like
sets.
a New York skyline that's like actually like printed on vinyl, like, and it looks like real somehow, like all this stuff. And
like wrap around the whole set, you know, lit like with.
And then also just seeing in camera what things were looking like, how things were being framed and shot, and tonally it really helped us kind of like get a sense for where Jake was going, like, and also watching, you know, the actors in action and kind of that was really cool because at that point, like we had already been working on it for a while and we were very familiar with the script, so it was just nice to be able to have things not just in our imaginations, but like being able to actually see it. And yeah, I think that was really helpful for me at least, like in terms of tone.
Yeah.
And you're right about like we were very fortunate to have started on the project like way before any of that, like before any shooting or anything. We sat down with a script and Jake, and for probably a couple months or maybe even more, maybe 3 months or something, every week we were just in dialogue with Jake, and it was just about music and about like finding the sound for the film. And so like
meeting right here actually.
Yeah. And we would, and Rafiq and I don't live here. Rafiq's in Brooklyn, I'm in Mexico, so we were just on Zoom. But like started out with just like throwing like a ton of theme ideas at Jake, and then whittling it down. And yeah, it was a real privilege to be able to basically create a massive library of music prior to everything. Because we were able to sort of establish like the tone and like the feeling of the sound. And like Jake shared with us, for example, that like on set he was like playing the music for the actors before like doing certain takes, or like he played like the suite of themes that we came up with before their first table read. So like it was really like kind of a rare opportunity to be able to have music be an establishing force rather than like a catching up thing,
for
like,
sure.
like what you were describing.
It's inspiring them.
I mean, you're helping to, and it's just an establishing force, you know.
I want to get more into Thunderbolts, but for those listening that maybe aren't familiar with you guys, just want to kind of backtrack a little bit. So Ryan Lott was the sort of founder of.
He was
just your moniker.
Yeah.
Last time
you are Ryan.
I checked out the wiki.
But
we did too.
Son Lux was your sort of experimental music solo thing you were doing, and then when did Rafiq and Ian come into play?
So I was making this. I was just making music on my own, and I had a day job. I was a music house composer, and actually, I actually developed the first Son Lux record, which is called "At War with Walls and Mazes," before I started getting into scoring ads. But I was a full-time ad music composer as I was slowly on the side developing my Son Lux project. It was just like the stuff that I could have fun making from my heart without having to think about anything else. And essentially what started to happen is I started to get a little bit of traction on that project. And I was able to then like take a deep breath and think about going out, taking a risk basically. And can I abandon my day job and my benefits and like all the security that comes with doing this really great job? Because, writing music for ads is super, super hard. But in my case, it was also really awesome because I was constantly encountering fantastic musicians. I was constantly being challenged to write in different directions, occupy different headspaces, meet different creative briefs. And it was the kind of like compositional etude after etude after etude that you would never submit yourself to if you weren't getting paid.
Right.
And all of that I really benefited from. I also had a 24/7 creative home base that I could work from in Manhattan that I could walk to from my own home, which was pretty amazing. So it was a great scenario, but at the same time, I like Cheerios and everything, but I don't necessarily really want to be writing music for Cheerios commercials for my life. And especially since it's really hard. So I started getting enough traction where I was like, okay, if I'm going to take the next step with this Son Lux project, I need to be able to tour. Touring is so expensive and prohibitively so. But I got to a little spot where I could try it, but it pretty much meant abandoning my day job. I had engaged Rafiq on a couple other projects. We had mutual friends and had hung out just online. And there was something called Skype back then. And
pre-Zoom, kids.
So right at the tail end of making my third record at Son Lux called Lanterns, one of the last things I did is I invited Rafiq to play on a song called Easy, and which is pretty fun because that became like the biggest Son Lux song to date still. So that was that, and then my first film score, which was called Disappearance of Eleanor Rigby. And then this side project I was doing with Sufjan Stevens and Serengeti, artist, rapper Serengeti, we called ourselves Sisyphus. And we made a record, and I invited Rafiq to be part of 2 of those songs. So I was already in a state of kind of like pretty continual collaboration with the dude. And then I was like, you know what? If I was to make a band, right? Even though Son Lux music doesn't have a lot of explicit guitar work, I'm really invested in the idea of bringing new energy to the stage that is quite distinct from what I'm sculpting in the studio. To me, there is no life in just recreating what happens in the studio on stage. Like, don't waste my as a someone who goes to see music, don't waste my time with that.
Yeah.
And also, as someone who's continually can't stop composing, I can't imagine utilizing all the energy it takes to bring something to stage just in the act of recreation. It's just, I couldn't do it. So I was like, let's reinvent for the stage. One of the great ways to reinvent is to essentially begin with limitation. And one of the ways you can begin with limitation is start with, in this case, as a primary color, an instrument that isn't frequently featured in the music, especially if the person who would be at the helm of that instrument is someone who isn't limited to the perspective musical perspective of only that which the guitar can bring, right? So like I saw in Rafiq in his own music, which is super rad, a very prismatic composer, someone who absolutely thought about production as composing, sound as music, and clearly had a grasp of rhythm that I was jealous of, and like grasp a lot of stuff I was really jealous of. So I was like, this is the dude I would want to start the band with. Problem is, we have to be more than a duo, and I was imagining like a quartet, and then I like ran the numbers, and that was going to be impossible. So I was like, okay, maybe we need like one other guy who's kind of like good at everything else. Like, could he maybe also it definitely needs to be a drummer. Could he also maybe be like someone who's adept at electronics and maybe even do like backup vocals? And like, I know it's asking a lot, but maybe there's some keyboard parts that he could play, and like, or she or whatever. And oh yeah, ideally he's not another white guy. And like, and then guess what? There was a guy out there.
The Craigslist ad you called? No, I'm just kidding. So how was Ian connected?
So you guys had done a show together.
Yeah.
Just one.
We had done one show together where Ian was subbing for our friend Casa Overall, who actually then like weirdly ended up being in the audience of the show.
Nice.
But it was for our friend Will Johnson, and we like did a rehearsal together, loved playing together. I gave him a ride home afterwards, and we hit it off, connected about a bunch of things like in that short 20-minute car ride. And I didn't really like get much more of a chance to interact with Ian than that, but I just was really moved by the few hours we spent together. And then he was on the cusp of leaving for his first like significant touring experience with Matthew Deere, and I got involved in other things, and we like weren't really in touch for a bit. And then when Ryan and I were brainstorming about this, a fateful event occurred involving unsurprisingly, knowing Ian as well as I do now, involving food. Where I went to Fara Pizza with my cousin. I don't know if you guys have heard of Fara, but it's a legendary spot in New York. And for the longest time, it was like a sole proprietor kind of one guy would like make every pizza.
Does the place exist?
The place exists.
I know he passed away.
Yeah, he passed away. I think it might still be in the family. I'm not sure. It's supposed to still be very good, which is great. But yeah, thankfully.
This episode is sponsored by.
Yeah. But
I mean, this band is.
I mean, kind of, yeah, indebted to. Because what happened was, I went to this pizza place. There's what looks like an oil painting of this man putting the pizza like in the oven, and I took this early Instagram photo, probably with some like ridiculous filter on it, of like that painting in the foreground, and then blurry in the background with like a vignette on it or something is like the actual guy putting the pizza in the oven. And Ian Chang liked my post on Facebook, and I had not talked to Ian in a really long time, and we had been racking our brains about like who this person was that like magically ticked all these boxes. And in that moment, I was like, oh, wait a minute, I do know the person. Like, it's that guy. Like, I should,
I love these layered moments that you think that like at the time it was like whatever, but now it's like the moment, the pivotal like on Facebook.
Like folks, be free with your likes. If you like it, like it.
Yeah, the secret is like Ian's like, I almost didn't even like that post. It wasn't a good photo.
Picture was trash, man.
There is something interesting about the
whole
way
trajectory of your life has changed because you liked it.
Well, there's sort of like this decentralized aspect of you guys coming together because you live in different cities. At one point, I guess you were all
in Brooklyn.
In
Brooklyn. Yeah.
So maybe that you can speak to like kind of like the
but
formative
even
part
I wasn't
that.
even in Brooklyn when I first when Rafiq and I started.
You weren't?
Working. No,
Okay.
I had made my way back there. I spent some time in Irvine, California. I wouldn't recommend it. Sorry. Actually, not really. Sorry. But I was making my way back to Brooklyn. It was one of the reasons why it was tricky for me, because I was starting to have some relationships with, obviously Los Angeles is full of like awesome musicians, and I was starting to flirt with the idea of it being a Los Angeles based band. But then I was like, no, because I'm making my way back to New York. I really don't. Yeah. So it was like, the way it's just like, it was so tenuous how it all came together.
It's like the Postal Service kind of story, that the band.
That's right. I remember
where
that.
they're like mailing. I mean,
didn't
it was
even-
probably a little digitized, but you're not.
CDRs back then, probably because email couldn't attach more than like 3 megabytes.
Well, I heard something where you guys, when you came on board, and I'm wondering how Son Lux changed when you did come on board, but that it was somewhat impossible to play some of the music live. Is that how you put it?
Just wasn't ever designed to be.
Yeah, it
performed
was.
live, so.
It wasn't designed to be, and I think early realization that was very fruitful was that it wasn't. It also, in addition to not being possible, it also wasn't worth trying.
Yeah.
And I think really we from the outset were very of the mindset that like the studio and the stage were two different mediums and they were intended for different purposes, and that there were advantages in a live setting to being able to like speak more to the moment that you're in and like let things unfold in a way that, you know, and sometimes maybe like sparer and less sort of like stratified than a recording might, you know, and you know, but also that like reaching for that level of detail and precision, and like a live show is almost besides the point in certain ways. And that giving fewer things more room to breathe could result in an experience in a live setting in which everyone's sharing the same air and there's a palpable sense of risk and uncertainty, like that things.
And there's one take. There's not, you know, recurring listens.
Yeah, so it was kind of more like the challenge was like, okay, well, you know, we have a guitarist and a drummer and someone playing keys and singing, and this is like a piece of music that originally was born of a really advanced sculptural audio manipulation process that involved almost none of those things. Like, how do we reconcile those two in a way that's like in the spirit of the original intention, but maybe in some ways is like contrary to the original intention, and that the surprise and the departure is actually like fruitful ground for another reincarnation of the music. Because Ryan had this practice dating back to all, like before all of this, of working to find new life inside of songs and reinventing them pretty dramatically. And so that really was also like another great jumping off point for us when we started as a band, like being like, okay, like how does this music exist live? And then once it became clear that we weren't just going to tour together, but actually find a way to like be a band that makes music together from the ground up, that, you know, precedent that you had set in your own process of like just being willing to kind of like having the courage, frankly, to like take something that you've labored over and made so precisely and being like, what's another life that this could have?
Yeah, and you
like,
kept the same name. It could have been just a completely new band.
Well, I definitely was, I mean, oh my God, I'm so thankful that I didn't try to name the project like my personal name. I mean, I knew I had I didn't know it was going to grow to be what it is, of course. There's no way I could have anticipated it. But I do know that I felt like forever, I've always felt like kind of chameleonic, musically speaking, and knew that there was no single pursuit that I'd want to like attach my personal name to, knowing that I would want to pivot and pivot and pivot, you know. I just knew that about myself. Interestingly though,
Weirdly.
I think, you know, weirdly is like Son Lux actually is that. Son Lux is that, like, is the home for all of those pursuits, all, like from a Marvel movie to like, you know, to like an experimental set of like to a sound installation to, you know, like pop songs to like, you know, it's like the whole whatever it is that we're engaged in. It's like in the end, Son Lux is something that can accommodate those varied pursuits, I think.
Well, just the construction of it being, because most people would think of a band even in the very traditional sense of, you know, like you identified, somebody plays a guitar, somebody plays the drums, somebody's lead singer, like whatever it is. These are the jobs and that's how it comes together. And use the word prismatic here because it's almost like you're trying to balance these different facets of different art forms and seeing what all of those can add up to.
Yeah, I mean, inherently, the Son Lux project began as an investigation of reconciling contrasts. I mean, at the core, that's still what it is. So I knew that whoever I welcomed into the fold would absolutely have to have that intuitive
shared value.
Yeah. And curiosity for, contrast. And
So I want to ask about basically when you first meet the Daniels, that is quite, well, I guess the script is the story that we've heard Ryan mention in the past, which you thought things were out of order the first time that you read this. What was that
how could they not have been?
Because that at that point you've done some work. I know you kind of the first thing that caught my eye was Looper and doing some work with Nathan Johnson on that. But then this is like a pretty big undertaking, especially for Son Lux to take on.
Yeah.
And there's got to be a moment where you're like, boy, this is a lot to wrap our heads around.
Yeah,
and who knows if something will come out of this.
In the first moment, we didn't really think we were going to be doing it all. And we didn't think there was going to be nearly as much score as it turned out to be.
Yeah.
What was the initial ask, or do you remember?
I guess initially we thought that it was gonna be sort of like some score and then some like licensing of Son Lux material to sort of score, like to be the music in the film. I guess no one really was like, oh, this is how many minutes of music is going to be in the film or anything.
Yeah, but there were also like very clear asks out of the gate for things that we were like very uncomfortable with the idea of us doing.
Yeah, I think we had like
the first thing that we were asked to do was a funny one.
Not even before that, they were talking about like how there would have to be, I don't know, it just felt like we were like, oh, we could creative direct, we could invite people who are good at doing that, and we could remember, because doesn't that feel like that was part of the initial conversation?
One of the first things that they were like, okay, the first thing that we need, because we need it before the shoot, is a song that's from an imaginary musical where the characters have hot dog fingers.
Slap your hands on your thighs.
And and as much as that movie was like, I feel like we were very perfectly suited to score it, that was one of the briefs where we were just like, that we should probably kind of hire someone else to do who loves musicals and musical theater and like that history, because like we don't really have a relationship with that.
I would go so far as to say even like the whole thrust of it being funny and like the aspects of it that needed to be like kind of funny and ridiculous, like I don't know at the outset if we thought we really would be the ones really
I kind of imagined that we wouldn't, but we could creative direct, and we'd hire people.
Sounds like a hybrid music supervisor composer type thing, right?
Well, that's what, because again, they'd be licensing a lot of our songs and stuff like that. But and
it was just by being thrust into that and like unexpectedly having so much fun doing it and realizing that it actually was working. Like,
totally.
I think that really set the tone for the whole rest of the project, because they had seen in us something that we didn't see in ourselves, which was that we like would actually, you know what I mean? Like it was like sort of,
it's weirdly sort of like analogous to what happens to the characters in the movie in terms of just like learning about oneself through sort of stepping into different universes. And for us, meaning like stepping into certain roles and certain like kind of like making music and things that we didn't expect of ourselves and finding joy and ourselves in it. And so I think like it was definitely a project that like expanded our limited perspectives of ourselves, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's something that I'm super grateful for.
Yeah.
Now the timeline for that,
it set the tone really for Thunderbolts too, because like when we were staring down the barrel of a very different kind of film that we never imagined ourselves doing, we actually had it was like, well, this feels like last time. We never imagined ourselves doing what we did with Everything Everywhere, so we have no excuse but to like think differently about it.
Was that a huge pivot structurally, working on a project that's so much bigger scale with Thunderbolts, and there's so many more creative opinions, I imagine, although I'm sure those are try to keep those distinct, but that seems like a lot to take on, a lot more pressure.
Yeah.
Because you didn't know what Everything Everywhere All at Once would blossom into at the time.
No,
but this is going to be a thing.
The expectations are
different,
astronomical.
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, I think there's also like just practically and logistically, there was a really significant difference in terms of like Everything Everywhere being the multiverse film that it was, and the brief was kind of like, you know, finding sounds that would instantly identify all of these different universes but seem uncorrelated with each other, and then like eventually get woven together into something that like felt unified and cohesive. From the vantage point of how we work, being like 3 people in 3 different cities and time zones, like there was a logic that complemented that in terms of like how we ended up working on the music. And with this film, we knew we were going to go in an orchestral direction, and we kind of knew that we couldn't rely on leaning into different sort of energies throughout, and that establishing like a really clear and consistent tone from the outset was going to be really important. And so that was, you know, as much as like, yes, this film, it's Marvel Studios, it's, you know, big kind of expectations and pressure, and, you know, like all these things that we've never really stepped into before. But even beyond that, just on a creative level, there was sort of an internal discovery that needed to take place. And I think we learned a lot from trying to like figure out how to, you know, more deeply cohere our individual approaches into like something that, you know, like we would like to think, I think when you listen to the music, that it's not immediately clear who did what, or, you know.
It's interesting because you mentioned the timeline coming on board, seeing the sets in Thunderbolts, and I know Everything Everywhere, you guys worked on it for like 2 to 3 years. I'm sure there's other composers out there who are a little jealous of the time you guys are getting on these projects, but with Everything Everywhere being your first film.
Yes and no. I mean,
that's true. I mean, I guess you can go crazy a little bit
like
too.
with Everything Everywhere, like they hired us before they cast anyone. So while that's amazing, it also means we're like, you know, we're working for a long time on it, and working really hard for a long time on it.
And you're setting a tone.
And we're setting a tone, but then we're also, you still have to be there to the bitter end, making adjustments. You know, it's like, so absolutely, I mean, honor, you know, of our lives in many ways to like be involved in that project, and wouldn't change a thing. But I think a lot of the way the life has to work for a lot of composers is you can't be tied up for years on a single project.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good point.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like you
just
really
from a
need it to be like
logistical
6 weeks, hit it and quit it. Because you know, the budget ain't changing. You know what I mean? It's like you're still working. You have to say no to other things. You know, it's like.
But that timeline probably gave you guys a good learning your workflow, right? Because you haven't done a score together.
Like I said, wouldn't change a thing. 100%. It was absolutely incredible.
And I have to add also that like every department did that on that film, and it was very much a labor of love because the vision was so incredible. And as it started to come together, like everyone just put everything into it. And I think the expanded timeline, which was due to COVID, in a weird way, obviously there are pros and cons, like, you know, people can do things in person, but in a weird way, I think that it made it possible for us to push that film to, on everyone's parts, you know, to where it really needed to be for it to hit, because it's a film that could easily have like descended into chaos enough that like it wouldn't have hit, you know what I mean? But I think we got it there because we had that much time.
Yeah. And in the case of Thunderbolts, we also had, you know, as Ian said, this incredible privilege to like really get out in front of the movie. But like our director, Jake, he had such a clear vision for what needed to happen that we could actually push forward really hard with confidence. Just with
how
him.
early?
2 years ago from tomorrow.
Okay.
From right now. Yeah.
From tomorrow, 2 years ago tomorrow.
Wow.
Yeah. Was when we got the first script. and we were working right away. And like I said, in this room here, Jake and I and the guys zooming in remotely, we just spent like one day a week for a while, just going through. We would like have tracks prepared for him, ideas, concepts, themes, and he was so clear-eyed about what the film needed that I feel like, and because we were so early that in the process there, we had this kind of like, at least I felt a lot of levity about it. Like, let's just try things, like experiment and play. Normally, and so that's pre-production, right? But like normally composer, part of pre-production, let alone production. So it's post and, and so you hit the ground, you don't hit the ground running. You hit the ground like stressfully trying to rush through a discovery process just to find your themes. And then you're also being influenced by all the temp that's going in. That's not your score, and it's not the decisions you would make in that case, and like not the tempo you would have chosen for that scene, or like all of these weird choices that you're also kind of maybe being crippled by. In some cases, you're being helped by. Yeah. And so it's a whole different kind of psychology that goes into the initial stages of scoring that we were really free from, having pre-scored so much of it, and I do have to say that our music editor, Alex Levy, was absolutely bananas awesome, and was I would be careful how I say this, but like in some ways I can say in some ways was better at our job than we were, meaning that we wrote so many pieces of music off picture that we wouldn't have necessarily placed where he placed that work awesome.
Yeah.
Where his intuition, having worked on so many films with so many different composers, his intuition was like really a vital aspect of the score and shouldn't be, and
also just like as the relationship being on the ground floor with editorial as the film was getting cut together, it's just,
This was not this whole, and we didn't really know this going in. I mean, we didn't know anything going in really, but we didn't know that going in, that like how absolutely vital like our music editor would be in executing this particular weird process, because there's a number of things we did differently than the way, as far as we know, the Marvel has ever approached a score. So
is there like a playbook for Marvel? Like when we're going from the contrast of Everything Everywhere, where it's like a total indie approach, and then you're going to this Marvel thing, they have a kind of a sound that they like, and they don't stray too far from it. There's a couple one-offs, but like, were you getting guided in a direction pretty intensely, or how was the freedom for you guys?
How did the wrestling over the superhero theme and all of its glory, how did that kind of unfold?
It was interesting because I think, luckily for us in a certain way, like getting involved in this process, we were really excited, but we were also a little bit confused because we were like, wait, you want us to do that? Like we just didn't think that we'd be asked. And we were, like there was a degree to which it was made clear to us at the very outset that the studio was interested in doing something different. Jake had a vision for how this film could work that was more grounded and sort of more, because of the storyline and because of the fact that these characters are like very real and tangible and feel more like ordinary people in certain ways than they do like superheroes, and are fallible and have complexity and regrets and stuff like this. So it was like, in many ways, it was great from a story perspective as a way in for us to something like this, and to that end, I think from the outset, Jake's direction of being like, okay, how small can we make things, and how intimate can we make them, and how minimal can we make them? That gave headroom for things to get really grandiose at times, in the way that they we eventually all discovered they needed to. But having the sort of smallness be the starting point for finding the identity and the sound
versus
of the film.
starting big and then scaling down.
We had so much more headroom and room for contrast. And, so for us, like, given how much that's a part of what we do in general, like, it really felt like we were at home. And then I think another thing, like, from the vantage point of what, like, the expectations of the studio might be, or, like, what's consistent with, other MCU films, like, we knew that we were going to go in the direction of orchestra, and we were excited, the three of us, to have the opportunity for the first time as a band to really explore that direction in earnest with an ensemble. And we also had dreams for how that might happen, which were like, okay, what if we can do this and work with this palette, but do it the way that we make music in general, which is to say, like, starting from the vantage point of, like, farming, it's like, if you go to any great restaurants, like, the relationships that they have with, like, the people who are farming the ingredients and, producing and sourcing everything, like, that's what makes the food. And for us, we've always developed and cultivated these relationships with, individual performers or smaller ensembles of people where we get in the studio before we have a song or before we have a concept, and we just start working to develop certain kinds of gestures or, ideas together, and hearing it as it's coming through the speakers behind the mics and being like, okay, now try it like this, or let's do that. And, this is not an uncommon practice in this day and age of music making, but to do it with a full orchestra, working in the way that we were at Studio 2 at Abbey Road with the London Contemporary Orchestra, like, hearing them play down, a fragment of an idea that we had presented and gotten approved to the studio, and then being like, okay, well, now can you play it, with no note and only noise? Now can you play it, like, through this 20 seconds, you're getting drunker and drunker, so that by the end, it's like really.
Did you ask them to play drunker and drunker?
We did. Yeah, we did. And that's the thing. LCO, just our dream ensemble.
They're so
absolutely
and excellent.
So open-minded, excellent, and, like, really dialed.
Super specific. Like the whole, like, everything. Like,
and it's like the degree to which,
and also, like, the blood, like all of it,
Yeah, it's just like you hear, like, all of that good texture in there, and, like, and so there were all these ideas that we were exploring in these early sessions that we, got the studio's blessing to do, that Jake was behind, and, we knew we were also going to record material that had been approved that was going to make its way into the film. So there was, like, a sort of negotiation there, but getting those materials and being able to go fully in the direction of, like, manipulation and contamination and degradation of the orchestra to the point of, like, being unrecognizable. Like, some of the, like, quote unquote most, like, strange or odd or, like, unplaceable, uncharacterizable sounds in the score are born of the orchestra.
Yep.
And the continuum between that.
Can you remember, the film is out now.
Yeah.
Can you remember any specific moments that you thought, that's really, that pushing it, we're pushing it here, this is really something zany that we're bringing in? I
mean, I think, do you have something?
Well, I mean, I think a lot.
Yeah, that's the thing, is like, it's a little bit less, at least in the way that it manifested in this film, it's a little bit less, like, that kind of just, oh, we've pushed this so far and it's front and center. And it's more, I think the thing that we're all proudest of, or one thing that we're all proudest of, is, like, that continuum between the super, like, unrecognizable as orchestra stuff and the stuff that's, like, very obviously people in a room playing instruments.
Yep.
If you try to figure out where the sort of boundary line is, or, like, like, it's just invisible. It's, like, purely like a spectrum of light, and that to us was really fun to get into. And this way of working, I think, is, like, just the start of a new chapter for us in terms of things that we want to do.
That's right.
One of the things that really stood out to me in the Thunderbolt score is the percussion. It's different.
Yeah.
It's not the normal kind of Marvel vibe. And that was like what to me felt like your guys' trademark for the score. Was that a foundation when did that develop into becoming such a major piece in the music?
It started developing pretty early on, and it was definitely under direction from Jake. You know, when Rafiq's talking about like how he was telling us that to start smaller, you know, and so one of the obvious places to start is percussion, you know, rather than writing for like big orchestral like percussion from the get-go, which, you know, that does make its way into the film in moments, of course, like, and in a way, like, I feel like there was like a tension in the beginning with Jake where we were kind of like, you know, it's gonna have to get big sometimes, right?
Bro, you know, like, let us lay in because you're gonna need it.
You're
Like,
gonna
no,
need
I
it.
know, but let's find. Yeah.
But we started with like trying to find something else, and it was a bit of a serendipitous, random thing where in my studio in Mexico City, I'm part of sort of like I have a little production room in a larger studio, and they like had some big deliveries coming in of gear coming on these like wooden pallets. And after the deliveries were done, there were like a few of them were just like laid by the front door ready to go to the trash. And like any good percussionist, I was like, oh, what do these sound like? And they sounded really cool, like kind of like resonant but also dead in different ways. And like there was like almost like a sort of tonality to them that wasn't too strongly any tonality. And like and so I decided to experiment with two of the planks and did a lot of just like recorded material and rhythms that ended up being sort of the backbone for a lot of the percussive kind of
insane.
sound. And it's funny because like, yes, like we've been thinking about this, reflecting on this, and it's almost like an analogy for like the characters in the film as being like, you know, like these like kind of detritus heroes that like are going to get thrown away.
Yeah, they're intended to be thrown away.
But they end up being like front and center, you know? And I think that was like one establishing thing that happened early. And once we kind of had that, Ryan also like kind of pulled in a bunch of kitchen items and did a bunch of sampling and
Small
recording
things,
of like playing on just pots and pans, glasses, and whatever, you know. So
also, and I didn't even think about this yesterday when we were doing all that press stuff, but this piano right here,
prepared
this
piano
actually
is a big part of the percussion.
Is a big part of the percussion because a lot of it is muted. So like these kind of like dead sounds that are, and then sounds that like kind of buzz. Like that the opening of like Red Limo is like you know, it's like has these kind of sounds.
Yeah.
You know, and your wood planks have this dead, but also like you said, kind of tonal quality, and so the blend of those. And there's also some things. There's like muted kind of prepared guitar stuff that feel like percussion, but it's not. It's like it's kind of tonal, but it's not pizzicato. It's not percussion. It's like what is it? You know, those kind of.
It's muted guitar recorded at two different adjacent tempos that eventually coalesce on top of each other and then sped up.
The planks, it reminds me of like when you buy a kid a toy and they play with the box more than the toy.
More than the toy.
Like you had all these musical instruments come into your house, and it turns out the palette ends up being
Marvel. It's pretty funny.
You've mentioned Jake a few times. Jake Schreier, is that how you say his name?
That's correct, yeah.
So EP and director of Beef, which is a show that has a ton of action and heart.
And comedy.
And comedy, which it doesn't surprise me at all when after seeing Thunderbolts, all three of those things come together. And I know the creator of Beef played a role in some of the writing of this, and a showrunner from The Bear. I mean, this was like a heavy hitter list of people. Were you surprised with all of the emotion and kind of darkness for it being a Marvel film when you first that stuff was revealed to you?
No, I mean, it's kind of why we're involved.
Yeah.
So like we wouldn't have been here if
it was just the classic Superman.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, you know, we're happy guys, but we make kind of sad music. You know,
it's just how it comes out. Yeah.
The melancholic aspect of the story is why it was intriguing.
Yeah, I think we all connected with the script in that way. and knew that there was a place for us in it because of that. And also because of the fact that Jake Schreier and Ryan have had a working relationship in the past. Like Ryan scored his movie Paper Towns. And also because we were hearing from Marvel and from everyone basically saying that this particular film, they're looking for something different, you know? And I think that all those things kind of combined, like when we were first asked to do it, like kind of gave us both the excitement to be a part of it, but also gave us the confidence to be a part of it. And knowing that we would be able to do it without getting totally swallowed into a machine where like we're not able to like actually contribute anything of ourselves into it. And I think it ended up working out.
Yeah.
And you guys are coming off an Oscar nomination, so it probably wasn't as crazy of like a sell because it sounds like he wanted you guys on from the start, obviously.
Jake wanted us, and I think the Oscar nomination and Everything Everywhere All at Once like really helped it, you know, with the like I think Kevin Feige was a fan of Everything Everywhere, was a fan of that score. So that all like kind of helped I think them have the confidence to know that like we would be able to kind of deliver.
Did you have to demo at all?
No. Yeah. I think in a way, like those things were the demo.
Yeah.
In their minds, maybe. I don't know. I can't really speak to that.
Yeah, it's funny. I didn't even think about that actually.
Yeah,
but,
we didn't have to.
I mean, it was a welcome. It was like a, will you be involved in the project? It wasn't like, yeah.
That's amazing.
It doesn't. It definitely. It doesn't suck. No, it doesn't suck.
Yeah.
No,
Jake's really smart about
He's
like
super smart.
about the way he onboarded us and like the things he had us start doing first, which was theme exploration, and then once, you know, I don't know how many themes we sent in, but it was a lot, and he picked like a number of themes that he was just like, this is the sound of the movie. He had us make simple piano demos of each theme to play for the studio so that they could get these melodies in their ears. And then once they were kind of like, yeah, we like this, then he had us make like a much more involved, like kind of suite of those themes. And I think that was like key in kind of like gaining the studio's confidence, you know what I mean? And from there, it kind of gave us, I think, the leeway to push in all kinds of different directions because the core of it was already approved in a way, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The premiere is at the same location as where you sat for a potential Oscar as a nominee.
And where you performed.
I'm just curious, like, you guys are on this incredible ride as film composers. Your first film gets Oscar nominated. Your second film together is a Marvel film that is like exploding into theaters.
Yep.
Where are your heads right now in terms of just like taking this all in? Have you had a chance to just sit back and holy crap?
You know what? I didn't realize it was the same place.
It's the Dolby. It's the Dolby.
That's funny. I think it comes in waves, you know, like the sort of it's something that's gonna take time for the dust to settle, you know what I mean? And I know that we're already looking forward to the next thing, but it is important to kind of reflect on just how insanely amazing the past few years have been.
And I think also like there's a degree to which in these situations, like you just say, oh my God, like how did this all even happen? I mean, yes, like we, you know, this has been an incredible experience. And I think we've brought a lot of ourselves to it and a lot of energy and invested so much of ourselves in these projects, but there's also a degree to which it just feels like it fell out of the sky or something, you know, and there's like one thing that was impressed upon us in the process of going through the Oscars nominations was like that those nominees are chosen by your peers in music and sound. And for us, like, you know, any feeling of like outsidership or like not knowing whether we belong or whatever. It's like when you think about the fact that like this is like a very established kind of community, and in certain ways like feels like it's been consistent, you know, in terms of like the kinds of music that are and kinds of training and expertise that are welcomed into the fold, and like for them to like, you know, for our peers to sort of like have open arms for us, I think is very you know, it feels really validating in a way, and like supportive.
Yeah.
And it also, I think, impresses upon us a sense of responsibility to be like, well, how do we like widen the door further and invite more perspectives into the fold? Because the reality is that like, as rich as the world of film scoring is, there's also just like a small fraction of like what music can be that is represented
100%,
to date.
yeah.
And so how do we allow for and make space for like more perspectives on music and relationships to music and musical training and all these things, you know, like just like expanding what's possible. And so I think we're as excited as we are to be here. We're also like trying to see what can happen to like help other people be here, you know?
Yeah. And man, like, you know, as incredible as like these opportunities and honors are and stuff, it's also like absolutely not why we make our music and why we like, you know, why we love each other, why we love to make music together. And so it actually feels kind of unfair to even have these awesome recognitions, because it's not our true north. And you know, the next two, like, we're gonna wake up in the morning and come right back here and spend 2 days going through recordings that we made together over a year ago now, that we finally have a chance to go through together and sift through, and like, because we can't stop working on records. And like, I mean, I'm really excited about tomorrow. It's like, I'm really excited about, you know, like that. Like, it's just, you know, that for me is like, we're kind of obsessed. You
Stay
know?
hungry. Yeah.
And, you know, it's like, it's amazing to get, you know, these recognitions and have such a huge stage and stuff like that. And, yeah, like, I guess my hope for us is that we're just always curious, and no matter what it is, no matter like what it is, like, let's just stay curious and be like, you know, just go after it and be thirsty and, you know, and grow.
Love that. Well, before we wrap up, we do a thing called 3 things. Since there's 3 of you, we'll try to make them quick hitter answers. But if you want to elongate the answer, go ahead. You want to start the first one?
First is kind of a sonic game changer. One experience as a band that shaped something that you do. Maybe you still recognize on a bigger scale, like a Marvel movie, but it's some specific experience that really caused you to tailor your sound.
Oh.
Is this being posed to like the 3 of us collectively or as individuals?
Yeah, whoever answers first.
I think we can answer individually too. I think.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's allowed.
Because I mean, go ahead.
I'm drawing a blank, so you guys go ahead.
Well, it's a very geeky and philosophical answer.
Yeah.
It's like literally this instrument right here. It's called the Osmos.
Mm-hmm.
It's made by a French company called Expressive E, and they sent this thing to me, and it has completely changed the way that I create music in the studio, and now I'm starting to perform, and it's unlocked so much potential, and it's all over the Thunderbolts score, which is pretty sick. And it's the one tool that I found that is particularly seamless particularly efficient in creating a direct pathway between my ideas and the sound of those ideas. Linked to my ability to perform with my hands.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. Repeat.
So I'm thinking about an experience, just, you know, it's a pretty different answer, but like an experience that I had, I must have been like 20 years old or something like that. And, you know, this was a time where my relationship to my instrument was very like I was like looking for a sound on the guitar that was really kind of smooth edged, or like, you know, like edgeless and smooth and supple and kind of flowed. And I was really like almost allergic to like anything that sounded like hairy or noisy or, you know, like crunchy in any way. And a lot of these kinds of experiences for me, like if you manage to convince me that something that I thought I hated is something that I love, you get extra credit. And a friend of mine sat me down and played me on a good system very loudly a new record that Ben Frost had released called By the Throat. And the first track on that record is called Kill Shot. And it's basically like these slowly blooming like fire hoses of noise that get sucked back like to nothing with like a low sub hit, and then they like bloom outward again. And it was like this, like simultaneously like the most unbridled kind of chaotic, relentless, like aggressive sort of sound, and also like clearly very meticulously constructed. And I think it sort of like I remember that as a turning point in terms of my relationship to my instrument, and just being like, oh wow, like you know, and to me like that smoothness that I'd been looking for in my sound was like, it was inspired by like piano and saxophone and stuff like that. But I was like, this feels more like what late Coltrane feels like when it hits me in the chest, like than anything that I've been looking for. And I immediately was just like, okay, I'm going to go in this other direction. And
that's cool.
Similar type of question, but with an artist or a composer, somebody that flipped you upside down at some point along the way.
Because that kind of answers both.
I'll answer this one, and maybe it's a little bit like insular of an answer, but it's true, which is, and actually it was even before I met these guys, I'd say Ryan, because like before I was invited to be in Son Lux, I actually encountered Son Lux's music in a very particular way, which was Ryan had done like an EP of music with Schrader Nova, also known as My Brightest Diamond, who also collaborated with Colin Stetson on some music. And Schrader was basically trying to adapt this music that was put together in such a way that is also similar to what we were talking about with Son Lux music, where it's like not designed to be played live, all this kind of stuff. And and she was putting together like an ensemble to do a video shoot of some of this music, and I was tasked with doing like the percussion arrangements and stuff. And I was just like, who the like wrote this and like put this together? Like, this is so sick and dope and meticulous and like textured. And yeah, so that was something that like kind of blew my mind. And so when I got the call to sort of go on the road with Son Lux, it was very sort of like hand in glove in terms of like all the types of things that I was interested in with rhythm and things. Like, it just worked really well. And that's really continued on because, and even in this process with doing these scores and stuff, like Ryan being the one in the group who's had the most experience, like he's really like kind of guided, and I know I can speak for Rafiq, like both of us, like through these processes and like how to think about scoring and things like that. So yeah, it's been very, very kind of hugely influential, and it's cool that we're in a group together.
Bro. Love you, man.
Yeah, love you too.
And Rafiq, any composer that you have, I don't know, been influenced by?
Well, I mean, Ian just mentioned the big one. And like, I could also turn it around and say that Ian has been a big influence on me.
Rafiq as well.
Yeah, like it's just, you know, there's a lot of
there's some love in this room right
this
now,
band
guys.
is
I
There's
don't
a
know.
lot of love here.
I think one of the reasons we work though is because we are so
Yeah.
different.
Yeah,
and we
that's
all
true.
have a lot to
Yeah.
teach each other and learn from each other.
Yeah. I mean, frankly, like, I just want to do more of it. Like, we've talked about doing stuff where we like spend more time. Like, I just wish I like even as much as we do together, like I want to like sit for a day and just like pick each of these guys' brains about things that I still don't understand about what they're doing. Like
Son Lux inspires Son Lux.
Yeah.
Is what it sounds like.
Yeah, but there are others
many,
for sure.
many
too,
people we're indebted to musically.
Yeah,
Well,
so many. Yeah.
How about this was going to be our third part of this question anyway, but because we're mostly focused on, film and TV and some other visual audio influences, what's a single project, ideally a film or a TV series, but probably a film for most of us, that influenced the way that you see kind of that art form, or it made you kind of say, wow, I didn't realize that was possible, or something like that?
I'll say two, and I'll keep it really quick. The score for Akira, which is by pretty mysterious Japanese like music collective, Gaino Yamashiro Gumi, I think is the name of it. And that was just like something that really made the hair on the back of my neck like stand up when I heard that and saw that film, and just like everything together. And then There Will Be Blood was another one where I was just like, wow, strings can be that, yeah, those are really two big ones for me. Yeah.
There's a Thai filmmaker by the name of Apichatpong Wilasetakun, and he has a way of working where like there's like almost no music in his films, but the way that the sound of the environments, most of them are shot like in Thailand in the jungle. The most recent one, Memoria with Tilda Swinton, was shot in Bogota. And the way that environmental sound functions is like, for me, more compelling and like sucks me in more than most film scores I've ever heard. And it's really, really inspiring. Like Memoria has a thing where it like grows more intense by getting slower and quieter. And yeah, just if you have the chance
I can see that. It plays with all the contrast.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I got to work on a project with Apichatpong last year or a couple of years ago that has been ongoing, and it really has rewired my brain.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's so many things I could say, but one of the things that's fresh on my brain is as a dad who's revisiting all of the Star Wars movies again and again now with my kid, and just kind of reliving the experience of encountering these stories and these characters, and in particular this music. And I can't, it's hard to imagine a world without John Williams scores, and I guess in particular Star Wars, there's such a breadth of music there. And, when my kiddo is like playing with his toys and he's like singing those themes and stuff like that, it's like the experience, it's a cool reminder that like the experience of story and of imagination and adventure and escape and wonder and all these things, how well they pair with music. And that, as my son is as an example, that it's a natural fit, as we allow our brains and our minds to go off into imaginary places, they go those places with music so naturally. And I think to find ourselves now in a place where we can accompany those imaginations, those adventures, those internal adventures and outward ones as well, as we can carry music with us on our experiences throughout life. Like, what a crazy privilege it is to be able to architect some of that. For
and
people.
I was going to say, you guys are cemented kind of in that now. No spoilers, but the Marvel Cinematic Universe sprawls out into many different things. It could lead to other films.
Yeah, you never know.
Anything you guys are working on? Anything you want to?
Yeah, I'm doing the math here. So 2 years ago, you were already working on this, which means you're probably
You're
well
supposed to be
aware
on
of-
set right now, maybe.
Yeah.
We're working on a number of things, not all of which we can talk about, but we can talk about our next film together.
Yeah, it's true. it's something that we're really, really excited about. It's with the director Bassam Tariq. It's called Your Mother, Your Mother, Your Mother. And we're just diving into that right now. And Mahershala Ali has been cast as the lead. And yeah, we're...
Very different film than the last two that we did. Yeah.
We haven't seen a Mahershala film in a while either. It would be nice to have him back on the big screen.
Great, yeah.
I mean, always nice.
Well, that's awesome, guys. Thank you so much for taking the time. Shout out to our sponsor, Vienna Symphonic Library. As always, hit up their website for some great software packages to elevate your music. And go see Thunderbolts asterisk.
That's right.
But we're not going to say why.
You have to go, you got to go check it out yourself.
Son Lux, thanks, guys, for coming on Score.
Thank you
It's
so
been
much.
fun.
For more, including bonus footage from Inside Composer Studios, follow Score, the podcast, on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and X.
This season of Score the Podcast is presented by Vienna Symphonic Library, used by many of the composers featured right here on the show.
If you're looking for high-quality, sample-based virtual instruments to elevate your craft or unlock the creative potential of your music, Vienna Symphonic Library has the tools you need all in one place with the Synchron Series.
Recorded on Stage A of the Vienna Synchron Stage, the Synchron Series features every orchestral instrument, pianos, choir, so much more, while innovating to create an intuitive, fully customizable software suite that puts you in control of everything you create.
These are real instruments recorded and engineered by the same people recording scores for some of your favorite films and TV shows: Netflix, Disney, Marvel, Lucasfilm, Amazon, HBO, so many more.
And with their flagship Synchron duality strings, you get both the large ensemble on Stage A and the small ensemble on the drier Stage B, performing simultaneously so you can blend to create your very own unique sound. Our listeners are using it. Our guests on the show are using it. Matt and I are even using it.
We're using it too. The best of Vienna, the city of music at your fingertips. You want to hear what VSL can do? Listen after this message for a demo of Alan Silvestri's Forrest Gump theme. It sounds so good, YouTube probably copyright flagged it.
And that's all I got to say about that. Or check out the items yourself at vsl.co.at. Check out their sample player, free libraries, and demos. You can play around with all that stuff right now today.
From all of us, thank you to the awesome team at Vienna Symphonic Library and Vienna Synchron Stage for supporting this season of Score the Podcast.